Hey guys, it's Sebastian here from Noble Frugal Studio, and welcome to the 2021 Opentoonz beginner tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to take you from downloading the program itself to making your first animated video file. Let's get started. When you follow the link in the description, it'll take you to the official Opentoonz webpage. So what is Opentoonz? Opentoonz is a software for the production of 2D animation. It can be used free of charge for both commercial and non-commercial projects. It's open source so that anyone can modify its source code freely and make your own version of it, and it's continuously updated, hence the new tutorial. So let's navigate to download, and we can click here, and it'll take you down the web page to where we can download Opentoonz. Click Opentoonz, and then we're taken to this page. Now by downloading either of these Opentoonz builds, whether you're on Mac OS or Windows, you agree to the following terms of use above here. So since I'm on Windows, I'm going to download the Windows version, which is Opentoonz 1.5, but if you're on Mac, download the Mac version. We have a notification on the bottom. It says, please make sure to uninstall all previous versions of Opentoonz before installing version 1.5. So make sure that you do that. By uninstalling Opentoonz, you won't get rid of anything in your stuff folder. It'll just get rid of the program itself. And we'll talk a little bit more about updating in a second. So let's download the Windows version of Opentoonz 1.5. Now, once it's finished, I'm just going to click this to run it. Okay, so when you double click the installer to run it, you'll get this tab first. Hit OK, then you get the license agreement. Now you can just hit next if this is your first time installing Opentoonz. However, if you already have an Opentoonz stuff folder, you're going to want to make a new folder for your Opentoonz 1.5 stuff. If you install this to an old Opentoonz folder, you won't be able to use all of the new features. So if you're upgrading, you want to go to the File Explorer, navigate to where you want to install Opentoonz 1.5. I'd like to install it on my hard drive, and make a new folder. Right click, new folder called Opentoonz 1.5. All right, as you can see, I've already done so I'm going to hit backspace. And then in the Opentoonz installer, hit browse, navigate to where you wanted Opentoonz to be installed. On your local disk is fine, by the way, if it's defaulted there. And then click the folder that you just created that's called Opentoonz 1.5. I don't have to do that since I already did it. If it's your first time installing, overriding the setting files in the stuff folder won't really matter since it's going to be the default installation anyway. But if you are upgrading, you can choose whether to keep your settings or to overwrite them and start fresh. So I'm going to uncheck this since I already have it installed. Hit next. You can create a desktop shortcut. Hit next. At the ready to install page, it'll show you all the tasks it's going to complete. It's going to install the program, and then it's going to create a desktop shortcut. All you have to do is hit install and wait for the program to install, and then hit finish. I've already done that, so I'm going to exit out of here. To run Opentoonz, you can click the desktop icon that you made, or since I don't like having icons on my desktop, I just hit search in Windows, and then I put Opentoonz. And now we can run it. All right, so here we are. When you start Opentoonz 1.5, you'll be greeted with this screen. From here, we can create a scene to begin working in. As you can see, our current project is called Sandbox. The Sandbox is the default folder that stores all of our scenes, drawings, etc. It's really good for testing things out and getting used to the program, but if you're doing anything serious, you're going to want to make your own project. You can do that by hitting New Project right here. After hitting that, you can give your project a name, and it'll show you the root of the project folder. Then you can hit OK. We're going to stick with the Sandbox for now for simplicity. Let's enter a name for our scene, 1.5. Select the resolution. By default, it's 1920 by 1080, which is 1080p. That's a good place to start. Make sure our units are pixels and our frame rate is 24 FPS. After we've done that, let's hit create scene. Now that our scene is set up, we can start learning how to animate. But before we do, I do want to say one thing. Animation is not easy, so don't beat yourself up if you don't get the stuff the first time around. If drawing is already hard enough, then stringing a bunch of drawings together, adding effects and lighting and shading, and compiling it onto one video is definitely not going to be a simple task. Speaking of drawing, I do recommend that you use this program with a pen tablet or a pen display. These devices will allow you to use your computer as a digital art station. Although the first thing you need to know how to do, which is essential, is how to save. Go up to File and hit Save All. You'll really want to remember to do that often. A shortcut is Control-S. For some people, Opentoonz crashes a lot, and you want to make sure that you're saving your work oftenly. All right, let's go ahead and start drawing. To do that, we need to create a level to draw on. Down here in the timeline, you see column 1. Speaking of, you should be in the drawing tab if you installed Opentoonz 1.5 correctly. You'll see column 1. Columns in Opentoonz act like layers in other drawing programs. However, we need to create a new level to draw on. Think of levels as the comic strips within a column that hold all of your individual drawings in an animation. So we need to right click on one of these frames and we can hit new level to create a new level. Or you can come down to this X sheet toolbar and click one of these three options. Click on the edge. The level's name is going to be D. For starters, you don't need to name your levels, but when you're doing more important work, it couldn't hurt. Make sure the type is on Toonz raster and that the width is bigger than our camera. So we selected a width which is 1920 by 1080. That means we're only going to be able to draw within this camera view. But let's make the level bigger so that we can draw outside the camera box as well. Set this to 3000 by 3000. Just so you know, on lower end machines, the bigger that you make your level, the harder it is on your computer. Let's hit OK. Now you notice this style editor has appeared. Before it said no styles over here, but now that we've created a level, we can now add colors. Let's get familiar with some of the tools. The first and most important tool is the brush tool. Hover over to the tools option bar and hit the brush tool. And it works just how you think it would. You can grab your pen and just start drawing. I have pressure sensitivity on the tablet that I'm using. So if I press lightly, I can get light lines. And if I press harder, I can get thicker lines. And you can control that in the tools option bar up top. I have maximum size, which is this slider, and minimum size, which is this slider. So if I put the maximum up, when I press hard, it goes really big. And if I put the minimum up, when it presses lightly, it's a bigger size. I like to keep my minimum really low and my maximum relatively big, just so that like that. Next, we have the hardness slider. If you turn that all the way down, your lines will be very, very soft, but let me just increase the maximum so you can see it better. That's with hardness at 0. This is with hardness at 100. So I like to keep it around 80. To undo strokes, hit Ctrl Z. Now we have the smoothness parameter. Without smoothness, your lines follow your pen exactly, but with a little bit of it, you can get some nicer curves. I like to keep mine just above 10. Now, if you like the brush settings that you have right now, you can hit this plus button to make a preset. You can name it and hit OK. Next up, we have the eraser tool. You can hover down here to tap the eraser, or you can hit E on your keyboard. Also, if you want to customize any of your shortcuts to make these tools easier to access, you can go to File, Configure Shortcuts, and search whatever you want to change. You can search brush. I have my brush tool set to B. So with the eraser, we can just erase things as you probably assumed. It has a hardness slider as well, so we can erase softly. You can also change the size up here. You can also change the type, so you can erase in a rectangular area, you can erase in a freehand area, and you can erase in a polyline selection. Pretty cool. You can erase lines or areas, or lines and areas. Areas are where your colors go in Opentoonz. So speaking of color, let's add some. But first we have to draw something. I will admit that the default brush in Opentoonz is not so exciting. So I'm gonna grab a nicer one. In the style editor, look above and go to raster. Then we have all these brushes we can choose from. I'm gonna scroll down and go to sketch 1. This is one of my favorite brushes. So let's draw something and then add some color. To select part of your drawing, you can go over and hit the select tool, which is this arrow up here. You have different select modes like rectangular. You can select in a rectangular area. You can select in freehand, which is the one I use, or you can select in polyline like the others. I just hit Ctrl S to save on the fly. It's really, really good to remember that, guys. Okay, this will do for now. Now we can go on adding some color to this. I'm gonna go to color, and then we can hit this plus button to add a color. Now we have two options you can use to add color in Opentoonz. First is the fill bucket tool, which is located right here on the toolbar. I just press F to get to it because I configured my shortcuts. The fill bucket tool does what it does in every single program. The normal mode will just click and you'll be able to fill in an area. We can change the color on the fly though, which is really cool. Not a lot of programs can do that. We can just click to fill in the areas that we want. But since this is such a sketchy drawing, it's not really finished. I'm gonna wanna select the areas that I fill since I know better than the computer where I want the colors to be. So let's go to type, I'm gonna go to freehand. You can also select rectangular and polyline just like all the other tools. But I think the fill tool is where those options work a lot better. For example, rectangular really helps out a lot on the fill tool. The next color option is the paintbrush tool. Now for drawings like this, the paintbrush tool is going to work really, really well since the fill lines aren't so clear. Let's go right here to select the paintbrush tool, and this will just allow you to draw in where you want color. In Opentoonz, there are things called lines and areas. Lines by default go over areas. So with the paintbrush tool, we can actually select whether we want to color lines, areas, or lines and areas. So if we select lines, it'll color the lines we already drew. And if we select areas, it'll color under the lines. And of course, doing both will cover everything, like so. You can do the same thing with the fill bucket tool. You can choose whether you want to fill lines, like so, areas, or lines and areas. By default, you're going to want to use areas. Let's go back to the paintbrush tool. I really like how you're able to change the color on the fly with Opentoonz. It's really, really easy to do, and it makes the drawing process a lot easier. Okay, now that we got the hang of drawing, let's get to the animation part of this. So come down to the timeline and click away from the first frame that you made. You can either click here or somewhere out. I'm going to click on frame 5 and then hit Alt-D on your keyboard. That will create a new drawing. And as you can see, this drawing will last for 1, 2, 3, 4 frames before switching to drawing 2. To increase the amount of frames you want a drawing to hold for, click on it and this white tab will appear and drag it out. Now when we hit play, our drawing appears and then disappears. And if we loop it, it just appears and disappears. We haven't drawn anything on this second frame yet. What you can also do to create a new frame is click on a blank frame, one of these green ones or these gray ones, and then start drawing. And automatically a frame will be created. If that doesn't happen for you, go to File, Preferences, Drawing, and check Enable Auto Creation. Just makes things a little faster. I'm gonna click and drag to select these frames, and then I'm gonna click this expose button and drag it backwards to get rid of that last frame. All right, now we can go on drawing our second frame. In order to draw the second frame, I do wanna see the first frame. What I can do is right click and hit Activate Onion Skin. Or down here on the X sheet, I can just tap one of these red circles. I can set how many frames I want the onion skin to show by tapping over with a frame I desire. So I just want one, so I'm going to keep it this way. If I want to get rid of onion skin, I can right click and hit Deactivate Onion Skin. Then it's gone. The way I'm flipping back and forth between these frames is because I have previous frame and next frame set to keybinds. I can go to File, Configure Shortcuts, type in Next, and then I have next frame set to X, and I have previous frame set to Z. Two things you gotta watch out for when using Opentoonz are the keys Q and W. W and Q I changed to Shift W and Shift Q because by default there are drawing substitution forward and drawing substitution backward. And if you're animating and you accidentally hit Q or W, you'll probably be confused on what happened to your drawing and you won't really understand since we haven't talked about the level strip yet. I would go and change drawing substitution backward and forwards to something other than just W and Q because they're pretty easy to press. And for a beginner it might be confusing on how to get your animation back to the way you want it. Awesome, so now we have our second drawing and we can flip between the two. I'm gonna extend this to 10, extend this a little more. Now when I hit loop, we have Fernanda doing a really strange dance. Really it was supposed to be a transition into sort of a confused look, but now that we have it looped like this, it looks like, anyway. Okay, but what if I wanna add a drawing in between these two to smooth out this kooky sort of motion, this sliding into this confusion. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and in between this entire thing, but I can show you how to add a drawing in between two drawings. You can go select the frame in between 1 and 2, and you can hit Alt-D to create a new drawing. Or you could just draw on that frame if you have auto creation enabled. Now I see the previous frame in our onion skin, but I want to see the next frame as well. All I got to do is hover over to the timeline and tap above where the circle appears under my cursor. Tapping higher will make a reference frame, which will not depend on where the playhead is, but tapping lower on this lower circle will create a future frame for our play that will move with our playhead. Now I'm just going to start placing lines on where I want this breakdown frame or in between frame to be. The arc is moving something like that, so I want her elbow to be here. This one is going to be somewhere here. To make flipping frames easier, I want to put these all back on one, so I'm going to click and drag to select all of them, hit reframe, reframe on ones. I'll turn off the onion skin and just flip back and forth. Okay, that looks good. Now that we're done with this, I'm gonna hit save, Control S, and I'm gonna select all these, hit reframe, and go to 4s. Space them all out a little bit so I don't have to do it all myself. I'm gonna drag and select all of them again, right click, step 2. That spaces them out even more. So let's hit loop. So of course you can play your animation with this play button. You can loop the animation with this arrow around an arrow logo. You can pause it like so, go back 1 frame with this, and go back to the start with this. The transport's pretty easy. If you want to check if your drawing looks even on either side, you can click this mirror button. So as you can see, my drawing is very uneven. I could definitely use some tuning up on this side. So if I mirror that, I can just sort of see what looks a little bit strange and try to rectify it. If you want to skip to a color, the shortcuts are the number keys. So 1 will take you to this negative color, the first one. 2 will take you to your first color. 3 will take you to 2. 4 will take you to 4, your fourth color in the style level palette. If you want to get to a color fast, you can just use the numbers on your keyboard. All right, so playing this back actually looks pretty good. Now it's a pretty basic animation. I could go in and add some extremes to finish it off, but we'll save that for next time. Now I'm going to teach you how you can add more layers. So we hit pause. Well, on column 1, I'm going to hit add raster layer. Untitled raster layer right here in our toolbar, and we can add another layer on top. Make sure that when you do create a new level, you've selected one of these green spaces. Otherwise, when you create it, it'll create in the same column, and we don't want that. You could solve this by just clicking on another column in an X sheet, but since we're using the timeline view, you just want to make sure that you have your cursor selected on a frame that's already occupied before making a new level. So now we have a level that's on top of ours, and if we hit render, nothing's there because we haven't drawn anything. But basically, column 2 will be on top of column 1. And if we double click this area right here, we can rename them. Name this Fern for Fernanda, and then shadows. Now we can go on top of this and add some shadows. When you add more layers, you add more possibilities with Opentoonz. I'm gonna use this layer for shadows, so I'm gonna select a dark color, maybe this dark blue, and I'm gonna turn this A parameter, I'm gonna slide this down. That's the alpha, and it's going to make us be able to draw over this, but it's going to be transparent. If we slide that back up, it'll just cover over it like so. And it'll render like that. But if we slide this down, and we view it, draw over it, it won't cover the whole thing. Depending on how dark you want the shadows, you can adjust the slider. Hey guys, I forgot to tell you that you can drag columns above and below each other in case you want to make a background for your animation. This is a finished drawing of Fernanda, and say I want to add a background. All I got to do is add a level, hit OK, and then we created column 4. Let's name that BG. We can grab this tab right up here. It'll glow when our mouse is over it. And then we can click and drag it below all these other columns. We can draw just like before, but it'll show up behind our first drawing. So feel free to go ahead and make your background. Okay, back to the video. Opentoonz is a really powerful program. In fact, we can use the effects engine to improve the look of our drawing. I'm gonna teach you how to use this in another video, but for now, I'll just show you what it can do. To see what your animation looks when it's rendered, you can click this eyeball icon here. I think using warm shadows looks best for this picture. Okay, now that our animation is finished, let's export it to a video file. But first we need to take care of this background situation. And don't mind this circle here if you don't see it. This is just part of an effect I use to make the eyes glow. I'll show you how to do that in another tutorial. Let's go to X Sheet, Scene Settings. And as you can see, our background color is this transparent checkerboard icon. In order to make it truly white like it appears to be, drag the alpha slider all the way up. When you drag this alpha slider up, it'll make the background truly white when we render it. Or you can choose whatever other color you like. You can choose another color by double clicking this. It actually is supposed to make a level palette, but it appeared on my other monitor, so here it is. And you can change the color that way. Or you can just click it once and use the style editor that you already have. Make it a little gray so her colors pop a little bit. Now we're gonna go to Render, Output Settings. You can go to the different output settings by hitting Camera, File, or More Settings. First, we're gonna take the camera settings. So it's 1920 by 1080, just like we wanted it to be, and it starts at frame 1 and ends at frame 24. That's good. It's gonna save in the Outputs folder in our Opentoonz sandbox directory, which is what we want. If we click the 3 dots, it'll show you where that is. So it's on my hard drive, Opentoonz 1.5, sandbox, and outputs. and I'll show you how to get to that after we render. Now I'm going to render this as an MP4. By default, none of you are going to have this MP4 option. If you want to learn how you can export MP4s and GIFs for sharing on social media with Opentoonz, click the tutorial in the card. Export this as an MP4. By clicking options, I'm going to drag the quality all the way up. By default, some of you may have AVI, and you can export as that as well. Those of you on Mac may have MOV, which will also work. I'm gonna select MP4. All this looks good, and now we can hit render. Now let's open File Explorer to find the rendered file. Hard drive, Opentoonz 1.5, sandbox, outputs, and here we have the finished animation. With that said, thank you so much for watching, guys. I had a blast making this tutorial. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section, but I prefer you to join my Discord server following the link in the description below. You can post your questions in the questions channel on my server, and one of our members will help you out with whatever you need. Be sure to leave this tutorial a like, it took a lot of work to make, and hit that subscribe button to see my upcoming Opentoonz 1.5 tutorials where I'll show you how to add sound, visual effects, and more. If you want to support my work on this channel, follow the link in the description to my Patreon page. There you can see the updates of my short film Castle Dark, get cool exclusive wallpapers, and watch exclusive tutorials. You don't want to miss out. Also take a look at some of my older videos if you're eager to learn about Opentoonz 1.5. It's pretty similar to the older version, so I'm sure that you'll be able to figure it out if you look at some of the older tutorials. With that said, thank you guys for watching once again, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.